In America is heating up. Of course, it's only 2 days now until the actual election proper, or they do things very differently in America from how they do here, but officially it is on Tuesday. Ross Feingold is a former Asia chairman of Republicans Abroad, director of business development at consultancy SafePro Group in Taipei. Ross, good morning to you. Actually, before we talk about the American election, I do want to talk about Taiwan, actually, because Taiwan has marked 200 days without COVID-19.
Yeah, so Taiwan continues to be under a pretty much a business as usual situation. So stores, schools, whether primary schools, secondary schools, tertiary institutions, entertainment venues, it's all pretty much business as usual. There's still very tight restrictions on entering Taiwan. People still have to provide a reason why they're entering the country, such as for a business meeting of great importance by invitation from their counterparties here. And there's quarantine requirements upon arrival for the few foreigners who are able to enter Taiwan. But otherwise, these tight restrictions on entry, the ability to do contact tracing for the few cases that have occurred over the course of 2020 has enabled Taiwan to exist in this situation. But again, we're kind of in a bubble. I haven't left Taiwan for exactly 1 year as of today.
Mm. And that's the thing, isn't it? And now we look back at all those planes coming in and out right until we went into lockdown, and you just look back at them and makes you feel slightly queasy. Let's move on to what's going on in America then. And this is the US election. And so far, I mean, my goodness, I'll tell you one thing, it's brought out everybody, hasn't it? People are actually voting in their millions.
Well, when you say it's brought out everyone, apparently it's brought out your media as well, because I understand one of your Sunday papers has a big headline about the latest revelation from the Hunter Biden laptop. So, in many ways, this election is a rerun of 2016. Of course, Donald Trump is now the incumbent, then he was the candidate. But the things he talks about are very similar. America first, whether that's in the trade policy area or other areas, the cultural differences between a Republican president or President Trump now and a Democratic president. So we do have this aspect of the cultural wars that existed in 2016, and it's been repeated this year in 2020. But you are correct that one thing that is dramatically different this year because of the pandemic are the number of people who have voted early, whether they did it in person or they did it by mailing in a paper ballot. So come Tuesday in the United States, it's possible the result could be known and could be known clearly. And it really depends on which candidate has a lead and in which states and how many ballots remain outstanding to be counted and whether or not that number of ballots would have any effect on the actual outcome, whether in one state or for the Electoral College. And then, as your listeners probably know, there's all this speculation that things could drag on for days or weeks afterwards. But I'm still hopeful that we'll have a clear result within a few hours after voting concludes.
And Ross, we talked about key states. One of the big ones has been Texas. There's suggestions from the Democrats that they might be able to flip it over to their side. Democratic politicians have been saying this for years, and it's due to demographic change. So there is logic to their argument as the Black and Hispanic population increases in Texas, and they tend to vote for Democratic candidates. This is inevitable. But they also said it was going to happen in the 2016 election or the 2018 midterm election or elections even earlier, and it hasn't happened yet. So although it's close, we shouldn't be surprised if President Trump once again wins Texas's electoral college votes. But come 2024 or 2028, when we're talking about that presidential election, it's very likely that Texas will switch from a red state to a blue state.
And Texas was also the site of a flashpoint. And I think this has been a campaign that has become more and more tense in terms of the standoff between supporters of either camp, and with real risk and threat of things and violence escalating. But there was a moment of almost ambush of armed Trump supporters with threatening a campaign bus in Texas.
Yeah, this was captured on video, and it's made the headlines over the past few hours in the United States as well as globally. I think the important thing there is not so much what transpires in the next 48 hours. It's really what happens after the election, no matter who wins, who loses. That, of course, we hope that Americans can come together and move on. I mean, I know that's aspirational. It's very difficult, especially after the partisanship of the last 4 years. But that's going to be up to our political leaders in the United States to set the tone, whether it's the person in the White House, leaders in Congress, governors. Governors have played such a prominent role in events this year because of the pandemic, either supportive of more rapid opening up, or arguing, if they're Democratic governors, arguing with the White House about moving too fast to open up, and President Trump criticizing Democratic governors. So there's also the local level leaders as well, who will play a significant part in hopefully a national healing. And then the NGO community, right? The thought leaders, the people on TV. So whether it's more conservative commentators or the more progressive NGOs that, for example, have been involved in racial justice protests over the course of 2020. I mean, hopefully people will find their better angels and realize that we do need to come together and not bicker so much. Again, I know that's aspirational, but hopefully that'll happen in 2021.
Now, just explain, Ross, to those who, I think for most people, actually, we look at the way that the voting happens for a presidential election. And I think we quite often just think, well, why is it so complicated in America? Why is it not? You vote on a Tuesday like we do over here. We vote on a day and you know the result the next day.
Well, normally we do know the result, but we have to keep in mind that the president is elected by this electoral college system. Each state gets a number of electors, which is equal to their number of members of the House of Representatives and number of senators. So each state has a different number of electors. It's linked to their population, the number of House members that they have. Each state has 2 senators. The voting systems differ in each state. The number of hours that the polling station is open on election day differs. The processes that they have for early voting or mail-in voting differs from state to state. When they could open mailed-in ballots, some states they're opening them now because their state law allows them to do so. And other states, including Pennsylvania, they can't open them until Tuesday. So they have the stacks and stacks of mailed-in ballots in Pennsylvania, which is one of the most important battleground states, but they can't open them yet. So that might be one of the reasons why it's delayed. And there's also technological failures sometimes with voting machines, although that tends not to happen so frequently, despite claims of inevitable claims of voting fraud as well. But it's the 50 states, each with a different system for voting, and then you have to add that into the complexities of the electoral college system as well. But keep in mind, despite these complexities, in recent decades, it really was only that one Florida vote that became contested in 2000, and it led to a protracted battle. But interestingly, Penny, that's one of the arguments for the electoral college system, that we're just collecting the votes from each state and adding up their electors to declare who is the winner of the election. Imagine if we had a national direct election for president and we had to do some kind of recount, or it was disputed on a national basis, where we might be disputing 125 million or 150 million votes. So one of the compelling arguments to keep the electoral college is that if there are any disputes, it's localized within that state and potentially within 1 or 2 sections or counties of a state, which really was the case in Florida in 2000, where the disputed ballots were primarily in 1 or 2 counties rather than across the entire state.
So we've only got a few days left. Any final twists or turns, a sting in the tail that you might see coming?
Well, we do have the allegations against Hunter Biden and what it means for Joe Biden, or whether he was involved in Hunter Biden's business dealings overseas. So we're going to continue to see Republicans, President Trump himself, media that's friendly to President Trump are going to continue to focus on that. I think Biden and Vice President candidate Harris are going to continue to emphasize the more traditional kind of Democratic themes, whether it's something related to social policy and primarily healthcare, environmental issues, and an extraordinary amount of advertising. We don't have the blackout periods like you have in other countries, whether for advertising or for polling. So this is for people who are in the United States, they're going to see that just this enormous amount of advertising over the upcoming 48 hours. Keeping in mind, though, a lot of people already did vote, but hey, they got the money, so they might as well spend it. They don't need to save any money in the campaign treasury, so they might as well spend it all in the next 48 hours.
Ross, thank you very much. That's Ross Darrell-Feingold, former Asia chairman of Republicans Abroad and a director of business development at